their way to cope through what's really hard and uncontrollable.
Dr. Christine, you're spot on.
Yay!
There you go.
And now, coming to you from the K2 Studios in San Diego, California, it's the world-famous Chris and Christine Show.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Hey, how you doing out there today? Thank you for listening, and I am Chris.
And I'm Christine, and welcome to episode 74 of the Chris and Christine Show. Do-do-do-do.
Good old fantastic. The 74th episode. Dun, 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 number 74. You know what's funny? I remember a while ago when the Academy Awards came out, and they had the big 74th, talking about the 74th.
Yeah, like the 74th. When they do this is the 75th annual.
What are they up to now? Was it 74 or 75?
I don't know. I don't keep track, honey.
Yeah, I don't either. You know, it's funny this year not this year, last year, 2020, with the movies, like what movies are even out because the whole theaters are closed and movies are pushing back their release dates so far. Like, I don't even know this year when they do the Academy Awards, like next month. I think it's next month when they do them.
Yeah.
What's it going to be like?
I don't know. So I was watching a commercial when we went yesterday to the place we went, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And it was like a movie trailer for an upcoming movie. And it said in theaters and HBO Max. And I was thinking, in what theaters? Like home theaters? I don't know.
No, I think there are some theaters that are open across the country.
Oh, other states?
Yes, other states. And I do think the drive-ins are open because I did drive by a drive-in and it was actually open showing movies.
Oh, I thought that they were closed. But
well, you think about it. The drive-in, you are actually contained in your own car and it all plays through your car stereo now. So they don't have your windows open or anything like that. So everybody's isolated. So a drive-in is probably the most ideal, safe quarantine place you could be in, other than your own home, of course.
Absolutely. Well, enough about that, Chris. How has your week been going?
It's been doing great. At work, I just passed my 10-year anniversary for my company. So they had a little party for me, got me some Mexican food, and got me a little brochure and a little plaque that says my name and congratulations on 10 years of service and all that fun stuff.
But what's in the brochure?
The brochure is like a little catalog, a gift catalog is what it is. It's almost like, it's not very big. It's got 5 pages of things to pick from.
But there's like 10 or 20 items on each spread.
There's like jewelry, watches, some camping gear. I think there was a crock pot, some pots and pans.
Well, I already picked out the Tiffany ring that you can get me.
Oh, that too. I think there was a purse in there too.
It was a Michael Kors wristlet, which is like not very much. But
oh, well, I don't know what this stuff is.
So are you going to use your special milestone to buy me something?
It's funny. Another coworker said the very same thing. They said, "Hey, are you going to buy your girl something?" I said, "Whose anniversary was it? Hers or mine?" "No, it's my anniversary. It's my gift."
Well, I know you're always after a deal, and Valentine's Day is coming, so there you go.
Oh, yes. Maybe I'll just sign my name. I'll cross my name off the catalog and put Christine on there and give it to you.
Here, babe, pick whatever you want.
Anything you want. It's all yours, babe.
Marathon says we're supporting spouses.
There you go. So how's your work week been?
Well, my week has been super busy, like super, super busy. I barely came up for air, and I've been doing my dissertation interviews for my data collection, which is like a huge milestone. And I had so many of them this past week. And thankfully, my supervisor is allowing me to flex my hours. So a lot of the people that I was interviewing only wanted to interview during their work day. And so that means...
Why is that? So they get paid for it?
No, because of the technology. Like if they're working in the office or working remotely, that it just makes it easier because so many people are working like from their houses, but then they have kids all around. And so what that meant is, thankfully, I'm so grateful for this. My supervisor is allowing me to still get in my sufficient hours so I don't have to take any personal time. But I'm able to, I have to work earlier and later to kind of make up for the hours. So my past week, I've been starting work around 6:30 and then working until around 10:30 because I've had to take at times like a 2-hour or a 3-hour break to be able to do the interviews. And so it's been a lot, but the exciting thing is...
What's exciting about it, babe?
I am done with all but one. I have one this coming week, which means I am hugely on the way. This is the downhill slope to graduation. I'm on the 99-day countdown as of today, and it's just such a great feeling.
Well, that is fantastic. But hey, with these interviews, I got a big question. Are we allowed to hear any of those interviews on the podcast?
You are not. So
what? Why not?
When it comes to interviewing people for a research study, there's all of these special procedures that you have to go through to maintain anonymity for everybody. And so once I record the interview, I send it to be transcribed. Once I get the transcription back, it's like a Word document. I have to go through and I have to scrub out all of their names, any references to cities, school districts, or other people that are named. Have to spend a lot of time doing that, because what could happen, which I hope that it wouldn't, but when it comes to interviews like this and they're confidential sources, technically, if I was to reveal who they are, or if somebody was able to figure out who they are and they say something negative about their current organization, retaliation could occur. It could be the difference between completely losing a career, if you think about it.
Wait, your career or their career?
Theirs. And then I would be held liable as the researcher, and so would my university.
Well, why don't you just ask the people, hey, anything you can say may go against you, so speak clearly.
No, but
like don't say anything that might get you in trouble.
No, but that's the thing, is because it's a research study, I'm really trying to uncover what the gaps are. If people feel like they have to filter themselves, then they're not going to be very honest. But when you tell a person, we're going to give you a pseudonym, a fake name, and a fake district name, and we'll even adjust your title description a bit so that it doesn't come back to you, then people feel that they can speak freely, because the whole point of my research study is to try and uncover what is really at the root of Latinas not being superintendents. And so, needless to say, they were amazing individuals that I interviewed.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
As long as it went off really smoothly.
It did, and I learned so much, and I learned a lot about myself. But it was, I look at the interview process, and like I was using my podcasting headphones, and even just the way that I was able to engage with the interviews, I feel like I learned so much by how much we do interviews on our podcast.
Right. I was thinking about that too. You say you can do interviews. I was like, well, you're already a pro at it. So you got so much experience doing it. So it should be just a breeze. Now, when you did the interviews, is it like when they do those Dateline NBC shows when they have the guy covered up? He's like in the shadow in the back with that, hey, my name is Jill, and I'm gonna tell you my story.
No, I'm able to see the individual, but nobody else can view that. So even when I send the transcription forward, it has to be audio only. And then as soon as the transcripts come through and I'm able to save them, I have to delete the video and the audio so that it doesn't go back to that person.
And it's all done through Zoom, right?
Right.
How has Zoom been working out for you for these things?
It's been working out great. So the nice thing is, because I go through the university, there's extra security measures that are in place. So it's encrypted. And so like, you can't get Zoom bombers as easily.
How does it even work? How do people get Zoom bombed?
Well, they could just like type in random numbers to a meeting ID number, because Zoom has meeting ID numbers associated with it. And so people would figure out how to run those and hack in. But mine were, the links were protected. And so the password was embedded into the link. So you had to have the link to get in. And then I had to admit the person into, because they go into a waiting room at first. And so a lot of security measures are put in place. And I think that lots of times people don't think of that when they read research studies, is like all of the different measures that had to go in place.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, but it's a great training opportunity for me as I've been doing more writing. And so, that's pretty much it this week. I just was home, and, Zeke's here this weekend.
Right.
And so we got to take him out yesterday.
Yeah, last night we took him to K1 Speed.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't here last weekend. I took the other two kids to K1 Speed on last Sunday. I think it was Sunday or Saturday.
It was Sunday while I was doing schoolwork.
And then so yesterday was Saturday. So Saturday night we took Ezekiel down there, and it was so busy. I can't believe how busy that place has been.
Yeah, it was a 2-hour wait just to get him to be able to race. And then he did 3 races. So we got there at 4:45. and we finally walked out of K1 at 9:15.
Wow. And the funny thing is, because they normally have other activities for people to do, like they've got an arcade and a pool hall for pool tables, but because of COVID, all of that's shut down. In fact, their little restaurant, I think that was shut down too. Like all they had was like drinks. You could, water bottles and Coke.
And people ordered in. They like got some DoorDash food. I saw some people have some like
well, that's how you gotta do
stuff delivered because they were doing a little birthday party. But Zeke had a lot of fun, except for one unfortunate incident. And what was that happened?
The crash?
Yeah.
Well, he had multiple crashes, but he had one crash where the cart he was driving got totaled. They had to remove it from the track. Somebody smashed into him, or he smashed into somebody else.
And they hopped up onto his. It was so messy.
And then the front end of his car got ripped off. His go-kart, so they actually had to replace his cart with a new fresh one out of the back. And,
and the difference was he was actually racing with the adults this time, and I found that they were a lot more aggressive.
Oh, they are, and the cars are so much faster. The cars are very, very fast. They're like over 40 miles an hour. You think 40 miles an hour doesn't sound so bad, but imagine being on this tiny little one-person little go-kart going 40 miles an hour around a little course.
With other people in the same lane as you, trying to get around you and trying to nudge you around you. It was literally like watching Ford versus Ferrari, but like Demolition Derby edition. And then it was like, I don't know. It was crazy. And my mama heart was freaking out.
Oh gosh, you seen Christine. She was when the crash happened, when Zeke crashed in the other car. Christine's like, she clenched her pearls and was like, oh no, what happened? My baby.
Yeah, no, it was super scary. Unfortunately, he came out without any injuries. He's a little bit sore today, but
oh yeah, you get sore.
I'm not. We're not doing that again.
Well, I told Christine yesterday. I said, "Hey, babe, you want to try that?" What'd you say?
Heck no, over my dead body.
You do feel very sore. When I used to do it a lot, I mean, the next week long, I would feel so sore after doing the K1 speed. I did not race. I just did Zeke race.
Was it because of the K1 speed or because you were old trying to fit into those little tiny go-karts?
Well, there were some old guys doing it. There was an old lady doing it I saw. But the old lady was so funny. She was driving around the track like super
slow.
Like almost dangerously slow, because if you're going on the track that slow, people are flying at full throttle. They come around a corner, they're going to plow right into you. And that happens.
Yeah. That's kind of what happened to Zeke, because he slowed down a bit to take a curve so he didn't bump into the side. And then he bumped into the side. And then this other guy who had been trailing him cut that corner a little bit too close and ended up T-boning him and jumping up over his go-kart a bit. And we're just so thankful that he's safe. But yeah, it's definitely been an interesting week, right, Chris?
Absolutely. And this week, we have a very special guest coming up next who happens to be a doctor.
Yes, Doctor is in the house, and we are going to have him coming up right after this.
Hey there, K2 crew. We love having you as our loyal listeners.
To keep up to date with what's happening behind the scenes, check us out on social media.
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter.
And don't forget to follow our Facebook page.
Yeah, tag us in your favorite fun stories, and guess what? You might just end up on the show.
Ooh.
With a new year brings a new beginning. For all our listeners that own a business, I want to tell you about FedEx Office. If you are just starting or have been running your company for generations, FedEx Office gives you the best way to print marketing materials, posters, signage, graphics, and so much more. With FedEx creating, editing, saving, and ordering are fast and easy. We are teaming up with FedEx and Podgo to bring our listeners 30% off your next order of $100 or more at podgo.co/FedEx. That's podgo.co/FedEx for 30% off your next order. FedEx, the world on time. Hey, and welcome back, everybody. Our next guest is a renowned speaker, author, clinical psychologist, a social justice advocate. He tours the country and speaks with schools and corporations. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Adolph Brown.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, Dr. Brown. We're so excited for you to be here.
I am very excited to be on your show today.
Oh, thanks, Doc. Sorry, can I call you Doc? Is it okay?
Yes, please.
All right. Fantastic.
We're excited to get to know you a bit more, but before we jump into what you do on a daily basis and what you're known for, can you tell us where you're coming from in the country today?
Sure. I'm coming from the East Coast of Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Wow.
Now,
Virginia Beach.
that's actually on the beach, right? I'm trying to remember my geography. Here I was, a former geography teacher.
Yes, it is.
You know, we have this place. I grew up in the middle of California, and we had a place called Reedley Beach, but it wasn't a beach. It was like on the riverbed. So I always clarify.
I hear you.
So Virginia Beach, Virginia, what's the weather like for you today?
It's in the 50s today.
That's pretty cool for like a beach town, right?
Yeah, it's we prefer 80s and up.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
Well, what do you do there in Virginia Beach, Virginia?
Well, probably what's most important to me, I'm a husband. I'm a father of 8 wonderful young adults. And when I'm not hanging out with my family, I tour the world pretty much, talking about issues related to organizational behavior and personal improvement.
So 8 children, that is quite a feat. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And what are the age ranges of your children?
31 to 18.
Wow.
Okay, so they're all adults now. They're not, got like little rugrats running around in diapers.
Oh, no, but we just, about a year ago, I became a fun pa.
What?
Okay,
Yes.
Is that your name for a grandpa instead of like Papa or something?
Well, I wanted the traditional papa or grandpa,
Mm-hmm.
but my daughter and her husband decided that I act like a fun pa.
Yes. That is a cool title to have. I appreciate that. It's awesome.
So have you lived in Virginia Beach your entire life?
I have. I went to college at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, where I met my wife. She's from New York. And she was pretty cool to understand my definition of success, which it's not necessarily when you take the elevator up to the top, but it's more important to come back down and get others and help them up. So she agreed after college that we could move back to my hometown, and we've settled here and made it home and have done some really good things in our community.
That's wonderful. And so we read in your bio that you're a clinical psychologist. Do you have a practice there in Virginia Beach?
Yes, we do. We have it's actually a global consultation practice. So under that umbrella is everything from the consultation and speaking engagements to the coaching and the practice. We also had a wellness clinic, and we were using that term long before anyone knew what it was, but we were using it. We actually had a gym facility, a 24-hour fitness facility with internet cafes for parents and boxing ring, the whole 9. But it was needed in our community because there were many children and families that couldn't afford the actual gym memberships to some of the more well-known facilities.
That sounds like a great asset to the community.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it brought people together, and it kept a lot of people, particularly young people, on a straight path.
Yeah, I would bet. Does that kind of keep the drugs and alcohol out of it, kind of stuff, and get them? Do you deal with a lot of that type of stuff too?
Oh, definitely. Everything that can interfere with someone's daily activities of living, I deal with.
When you were growing up, did you always know you wanted to be a psychologist?
No, not at all. I actually wanted to either be a professional baseball player and I also was interested in football, but I like baseball better. And I had a grandfather who was a farmer who didn't live too far away. And at a young age, got interested in boxing and became a pretty good boxer. When I kind of outgrew that, got into martial arts, and that kind of stuck and got inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
And so I still didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but I come from a background of some trauma. My dad left my family when I was 2. There were 5 of us.
Oh, wow.
And our middle class lifestyle became inner city poverty overnight. And my oldest sibling and only brother, my hero, he was murdered when I was 11.
No.
So, I had a lot of stuff that I was carrying, and had teachers, my grandparents, uncles and aunts that really kind of helped me process all that stuff. But when I went to college and found out that, I could really major in anything and learn about anything, and I've always loved to learn, I started studying psychology and started asking myself questions about, wow, why did I behave this way? Or why do people feel this way? And I connected with my professors, and they would tell me things like, well, majoring as an undergrad in psychology, it's not really what it's about. If you're really interested in this, you're going to have to go on. So I was interested in it and got a master's degree, and then went on and got a doctorate.
Wow, it's great.
Now, were you the first in your first in your family to be able to go to a university and pursue this, or had others forged the path for you?
No, I was actually the first in my family of 5 to actually graduate high school.
Oh, wow.
And college. I oftenly joke to say that my school counselor, when she told me that I could go to the College of William and Mary, which is considered the oldest college in our nation, I said to her, how can one person go to 2 colleges at one time?
Right, yeah.
So that was definitely not necessarily in my trajectory, but at the same time, I had people around me to let me know that it was a possibility. So it was a great experience. And of our 8 children, 7 are in college or graduated from college. The 18-year-old is about to go to college.
Wow.
That must be a very proud moment for you.
Oh, definitely. My youngest sister, I kind of say I paved the way for her. About 3 months ago, she became a judge here in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Whoa.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Exactly. So we're proponents of education and giving back.
Well, Christine over here is on the same track too, aren't you, babe?
I am. Yeah, I'm relating to your story a lot about forging ahead and being the first. So I was the first in my family to go directly to a 4-year university from high school. And, my sisters were in college. They went to community college because it's the path that we knew. But yeah, definitely I'm walking through that path in the last semester of my doctorate right now.
Well, congratulations. And I'm cheering for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So you got your master's degree and you earned your doctorate. And then what happened after that?
Well, let's skip away a bit from the highlight reel and let's talk about some of that uncut footage in the process.
Yeah.
My sophomore year in college, my now wife and I had a son.
Oh, wow.
So I became a father as a sophomore. She was a freshman. So it was at that point that I actually started working in the field of psychology. So oftentimes people ask me, how was I able to get tenure at such a young age at the university and all the type of positions that I had? Well, I kind of had to start early. So I worked at a hospital, a psychiatric hospital, and my shift was from 11 p.m. at night to 7 in the morning.
Graveyard.
And then I went to class. Exactly. But I was fortunate to have some really good people that I worked with that when all of my work was done, I was able to study.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So fast forward after that, I worked when I graduated and I got a promotion at the hospital, which actually I got into substance abuse and substance use treatment. And
I was going to ask you.
Exactly.
We skipped something here.
No. You know what? I've never used substances, but I tell you what, I told someone recently that my 18-year-old, he wants to be an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
So I told him that the only issues I have right now are the fact that I think he's going to major in law and cannabis.
Okay. Put those two together, huh?
So I graduated, became a substance abuse counselor in the master's program. So I constantly worked throughout. And as a result of working throughout, when I finally decided what I wanted to do, it wasn't one of these things where I came in with no experience. I had tons of experience. As an undergrad, I taught for my professors. In my master's, I was a grad assistant. And right before graduating with my master's, the College of William and Mary hired me as an adjunct professor.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of the stuff was fast tracked. It wasn't something that I ever thought I would do. It wasn't on my bucket list. I tell people it was on my luck list.
There you go.
But yeah, very proud of the way things turned out. Happy about that, and try to help others do the same thing.
That's fantastic. And you mentioned when we first started chatting that within your being a clinical psychologist, you tour the world speaking. So what are some of the things that people seek you out for in terms of your expertise?
Well, it really depends on the audience. If it's an adult audience, it's usually things surrounding servant leadership, trauma, and how to be trauma informed or work with individuals who have been traumatized. And the spectrum can go from there to challenging implicit biases. For a lot of corporations that invite me, it's about learning to appreciate diversity.
Mm-hmm.
So many of those things I do quite a bit with law enforcement with regards to sensitivity training. So it kind of, the topics will vary based on the audience. With young people, it's usually about protective factors and risk factors,
Mm-hmm.
helping them understand that you can make choices, but the choices will eventually make you.
That's awesome. Now, if something that you were mentioning that you speak about trauma-informed practices, I work in education, and Chris and I talk a lot about trauma and past traumas in our own background and how it impacts how we interact together. And we know that schools are doing a lot around trying to work with students of trauma, but what's at the center of that work? Like, what does a person need to embody to be able to do the work of being trauma responsive?
Well, I tell you that, we got a big push in education now that people are saying, what is your why? Everybody wants to discover their why. However, I tell people the I has to be before the why. So when they talk about trauma in education, they're talking about secondary trauma. And that's the trauma that teachers experience from the challenging students they work with.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's important that teachers recognize that they also carry trauma. Trauma does not discriminate. So we as educators have to unpack our own baggage, because who we are, in my opinion, is more important than what we teach. Because
Mm-hmm.
wherever you are, that's where you're going to be. You're going to be there. So I think many educators haven't necessarily looked in their own backpack, so to speak. And when I help them in this regard, I remind them that personal storms are a part of life, but adults have to do a better job of not getting their students wet.
Oh, that's a good point.
Interesting.
So with that, have you found it challenging to get leaders and teachers to understand what it feels like to be a student in their classroom?
Yes, I remind them that they were all once students. And I come at it from, compassion fatigue situation, whereby
Mm-hmm.
it's different from burnout. Burnout kind of doing the same monotonous things over and over. But compassion fatigue is when you love what you are doing so much that you really don't reserve anything for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first questions I ask teachers, or even my students at the university who want to become educators, I would say, if you wrote a list of all the things you loved, how long would it take you to add your name to that list?
Well, if you're Chris, you'd be number one. I ask him, I say, do you love me the most? Am I your favorite person? And what's your response, Chris?
Now you threw me under the bus here.
No, it's a good thing. When I ask you who your favorite person is, what's your response?
You?
No. What's your response?
Me?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. That's great.
Right? Absolutely.
That's
Well, I look at it like this. If you're on an airplane, it's going down, they always tell you to put the mask on you first before anybody else.
That's right. That's right. And I guess from a clinical psychologist perspective, Chris, it would mean that you don't show symptoms of codependency.
Oh, well,
Not really.
in
I don't
this
think so.
relationship, no, but we've been working through those things ourselves. It's each of us tending to our own lawn.
I hear you.
But I think that that's a really valid point. Something that we've talked about is how codependent habits can come up as a coping mechanism to trauma that you're continuously enduring. And for Chris and I both coming out of previous fractured relationships and marriages, how when things are volatile, sometimes you just learn how to manage it out of a survival instinct.
Definitely. We go back to old habits often.
Right. And so one of the things that I was reading about you, and as I was researching you, I know cyber stalking, is that you do work around something that you refer to as the empathy gap. Is that correct?
That's correct. That actually came out of my research almost 30 years ago on African American males' perception of law enforcement, some of the very things that we're experiencing in society today. And that empathy gap was actually what existed between those two entities, whereby there wasn't a bridge of understanding or connection. So the longer that there was that gap, there tended to be isolation of the two. There tended to be hostility, animosity, resentment. So that empathy gap became critical in my study to bridge that divide.
So how do you define empathy?
Well, from a derivative level, everybody thinks of empathy as being able to put on someone else's shoes. It's so much more than that. Empathy would mean if I told you and Chris that I became a father before I was a man, and that was troubling to me. An empathic response would be the two of you would look deeply within yourself. After having listened intently to me, you would look deeply in yourself to try to find feelings that are akin to what I'm expressing, whether it's sadness, whether it's hopelessness. You would look to find those experiences within yourself. And once you are able to actually connect with that feeling within yourself, that in of itself would help you understand me and what I'm going through better. And then we can work on a solution from there.
Wow. That's good. That's good stuff, man.
Did you have a question, Chris?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
He's like thinking, we're processing what you're saying.
Yeah. What I was going to say was also, I don't know what it's like out there, but in California here, you probably have known that we have a big homeless population increasing. And I feel like a lot of the empathy you're talking about can relate with the homeless situation, because I run into these guys all the time, and you feel like you feel kind of helpless on what you can do. And a lot of them do, I mean, sadly, they do turn to drugs and alcohol, and they go down that path. But yeah.
Yeah. And oftentimes, Chris, what happens, we look at empathy from an outward perspective. So if we were to look at a homeless person, we would immediately say, what is it like to be homeless? But from an inward perspective, it would be exactly what you just said. It would be like hopelessness, helplessness. How does that person feel not being able to have what most Americans want, safety and security? So empathy is so much more, and that empathy gap is about connections. And if I may just kind of tell you a quick study in just a couple seconds. When you talk about alcohol and drug abuse, there was a study, and it was actually called the Rat Park. And the rats were used in the study because the rat brain is most similar to the human brain.
Okay.
So what they did, they noticed that if you put a rat in a cage by himself and gave him 2 water bottles, one with just plain water and another that was either filled with heroin or cocaine, that when the rat was alone, the rat would drink from the cocaine and heroin bottle to such an extent that it would become addicted and eventually kill itself from overdose. But if you stuck rats in a cage together with apparatus that were very similar to what we would put in a hamster's cage or a gerbil's cage, they did that with the same 2 bottles, a water bottle and a bottle that was filled with cocaine or heroin. What they found was that the rats did not prefer the drugs.
Oh, wow.
Really?
They also found that when a rat did drink from the drug bottle, that it did intermittently, and it didn't do it to get addicted. So one of the things that comes out of this study is that most of us think that that the opposite of addiction is abstinence, when in fact the opposite of addiction is human connections.
Really?
That's very interesting. I'm thinking about that, and like it really makes a lot of sense. And I'm just walking through my head of people that I know that have fallen into addiction, and it really does come in a time of isolation and loneliness when they feel hopeless, like you're saying. I never even thought about connecting addiction with hopelessness, and that hopelessness could have been the precursor to taking use of substances.
Certainly.
So I wanted to walk back just a couple of steps as you were talking a few minutes ago when I asked you about empathy, and you mentioned about empathy related to a police officer and a Black man that might be having an interaction. And what I was wondering is if that digging deep into yourself to try and connect with another person, if you can't find similar feelings to empathize, what happens?
Wow, that's an excellent question. If you can't find those similar feelings, then that distance, that bridge continues to exist. The problem with that is the bridge doesn't stay the same. The brain is at work, and the brain actually will make decisions for us long before we actually think we actively do it, and the gap actually widens. So I would really wish that we taught neuroscience, just parts of neuroscience in public education, private settings, that any orientation that you would have for a job, you would just people would understand that the brain doesn't help us to think. Right. The brain was actually, it helps us to make quick decisions, and it helps us to be efficient. So, I tell people all the time, don't believe everything you think. So, and that bias, when I talk about bias, that's just basically the brain teaching us without our permission. But then the brain doesn't like to be wrong. So if you've ever had a debate with someone and it doesn't seem like they're understanding anything you're saying,
yeah,
it's because the brain is actually looking for confirmation bias. It's looking for evidence in what you're saying that already supports what they think they know. So get beyond that, you got to be purposeful, you got to be intentional, and you got to be present. So this whole conversation is like interconnected, because it's difficult to be present when you have trauma and you're carrying baggage. It's difficult to close the empathy gap when you don't know neuroscience.
Oh,
so
right.
It's circular, but it's all about learning and critical thinking. And I think with regards to critical thinking, my definition is being able to separate your emotions from your thinking. And I don't believe I've watched a television newscast in the last year where I've seen that.
Oh, really? Wow. So, Doc, I was asked, what do you think about we had in recent terms with the attack on the Capitol and riots and things like that? People are very, very emotionally attached to their beliefs. Almost it's almost, I wouldn't say the word brainwashed a little bit, but there's kind of like this thing where people kind of get sucked into whatever. They're just going to go all out on whatever they believe, whether they're told or not, and they're just to get crazy, Oh
yeah, I agree. I think from a trauma perspective, so say you have people that are just carrying the weight of the world. Now you have some that have coping strategies and capacities that they can deal with whatever it is. But then you have some that is just the ticking time bomb. And, when we don't address our rejections, they become projections on the other people. So hate is strangely seductive. History has proven it. So if I'm carrying just the angst and irritation, it's not necessarily that I'm committed to your cause. It's almost like your cause can be a catharsis for me. And if you look at zealots from all stripes, if you would sit someone down and they're really passionate, the majority of those people, if you were to say, hey, tell me about, if they're passionate about President Biden, tell me about his policies. Sometimes they may not be able to do, they may not be able to do that. If they were if our former President Trump, if we have to have him, he's the best. You say, tell me about his policies. Which policy do you support?
Right.
Oftentimes they can't tell you. And what happens is that it would be called adaptive catharsis if it were positive, but it's maladaptive to the point that they're finding things to allow things that they're going through personally as an outlet to become their outlet. And there's some other factors involved in this. When you have leaders, and this could be shown from a leader, if we want to call him that, Hitler.
Right.
When you're telling people that these people, this group of people, they're the reason you don't have XYZ. They're the reason for everything that you're going through, your hurt, your trauma, your family, your economic disparity. These are the people. So when you do that, and you tell people, in Hitler's situation, he was telling people that he was winning the war, that they don't have anything to worry about. In fact, they were losing, that the casualties were in the millions. And then when they actually lost the war, the sheep, so to speak, that were following, they came up with conspiracy theories. Because how is it possible that we were winning all along, and then at this last turn, we don't win? So there's a whole bunch at stake. But I think one of the things that we overlook is that usually the people who are engaged in violent, antisocial types of acts, it's usually some personal things that are contributing to it. I've heard people talk about President Trump and MAGA, but I tell people that MAGA wasn't a 4-year term. That's actually interwoven in the fabric of our nation. So whatever it is that we think that President Trump contributed to, it would be more of the same, that the conditions were already here. He may have lit a fire or added fuel to a smoldering fire, but the conditions were already present.
Yeah. So you made a comment, and it's circling in my head, and I've never thought about it as this. And I think I'm going to quote you, so watch for it and get tagged on Instagram. But you said, hate is strangely seductive. And I think about the time that we're at in our environment right now, when in the midst of COVID and job losses and financial instability and political turmoil and people feeling completely out of control in so many areas of their life. I know when I feel out of control, I get angsty, I get edgy, and then, whatever happens, I pick that up as my coping mechanism. And it seems almost like, from listening to you, that to a certain extent, not to stereotype, but people that are struggling right now and don't necessarily have coping mechanisms or haven't dealt with past trauma can weaponize hate, and that becomes their way to cope through what's really hard and uncontrollable.
Dr. Christine, you're spot on.
Yay!
There you go.
All right, it's official now, everybody. I was just thinking about that, and personally reflecting on this. You can put your psychologist hat on if you want to, but I really have been thinking about, as I've struggled, and I'm going to own my own stuff. I've been very edgy with Chris the last few weeks.
What? No.
But it's come in the wake of my recovery from a really difficult battle with COVID, when I felt out of control, where for a time there, we were really worried, like, am I going to make it through? And I was hospitalized. And I think after it, I got edgy, and it was traumatic, and I hadn't processed through that trauma. So I picked up frustration and anger, and I didn't know how to put it down. And Chris has helped me work through that, as is my therapist, which I'm grateful for that. But there's so many people that don't have that right now.
Yeah. And that's such a wonderful illustration of how we can have traumatic things happen to us, but then lean on one another. It's really important in couples that oftentimes when they're stressed, couples distance. They want to deal with it alone.
Yeah.
When the opposite is actually needed to get through it. And not necessarily my psychologist had these days, just my family had. As human beings, we all want to predict and control. And when we can't, there's angst. and that's pretty much everyone. However, my wife went in for a routine mammogram about a month ago and was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no.
And totally treatable and curable. However, here we're going through COVID and so many other things, and this comes along. And one of the very first things that she said, I want to get in front of this as much as I can. And I didn't understand what, she was saying, because we both had tears in our eyes when she got the diagnosis.
Right.
But after that, she just started researching. I started researching with her and understanding cancer and tumors and other things. And one of the things that, like Christine said, we had to actually come together, because what was happening, she's had her first round of chemotherapy, and the side effects are like really, really something to deal with.
Right.
I bet. Yeah. Wow.
So she doesn't necessarily, she wants to kind of deal with it and go through it, and everybody else wants to be there for her. So we had a meeting, and we said, hey, how best can we help you?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, not allowing anything to chance. That communication is paramount. Nothing happens without communication.
Yeah, it makes me think about this Brene Brown video that I've watched, and it's about empathy and getting into the pit with someone instead of like standing up above and being like, okay, get through your chemo treatment and we'll be here waiting for you. It's like getting down to that person's level and saying, how can I help you lift back up? And what do you need to get back up this ladder?
Exactly. When Brene talks about it, she talks about the person actually going down in the pit with the person and actually standing there with them and being, like I said, in the dark, being present, but also listening, but then looking inside of themselves. The person that kind of peeks down in the pit and doesn't, that's sympathy.
Right.
There's no solution.
So what's the difference between sympathy and empathy then?
Well, sympathy is still a certain amount of compassion, but sympathy doesn't offer solutions. And I think where we are sometimes in our nation is that we're actually walking past the pit, hearing voices, hearing people screaming, and not even looking in. So I think we're at a point of apathy.
Okay.
And do you think that's because of like what you were talking about earlier, where there's like compassion fatigue, where people have been putting out so much energy to like, and dealing with so much in the media with deaths and loss, and that it's almost like they're numb to it?
Yes, I definitely think that. I think that just not the media, just because there's COVID, it didn't stop those forest fires out on the West Coast. It didn't stop the storms that were coming. So life continues to happen. And then on top of all of that, for some, the last 4 years was unpredictable, because sometimes you might have a leader send tweets that people didn't understand necessarily, or laws that people didn't understand and didn't appreciate. So it's, we say the United States of America, but I think the last 4 years could have easily been the United States of anxiety.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I'm going to get a t-shirt made like that. So
Doc, how do people remain positive going into 2021?
That's an excellent question. I often let people know that I'm able to get on this podcast with you today and give you everything I have, but that's not necessarily happiness. Happiness is based on people, places, things, or events. So, when people are tweeting happiness is an inside job, as a clinical psychologist, I'm thinking, no, joy is the inside job. Joy is being comfortable with who you are, what you are, and how you are. So in essence, I would say happiness says because of, joy says in spite of. So we have to be careful when we say, how do people stay positive? Because there's this trend now on toxic positivity, where they're saying people are ignoring the present and just being happy, happy, joy, joy. That's not what I'm saying at any means. I'm saying that whatever it is that you're going through, go through it, feel it. You can't heal what you don't reveal. So go through it, and surround yourself with people who will tell you don't tell you, get over it, but more or less, I'll help you through it. So it's all about who you surround yourself with. It's all about perspective, but it's also all about being human and understanding that at any point in time, we're all going through a storm, coming out of a storm, or about to go in a storm. And that's just life.
So, Doc, how can a person tell whether they're being happy on the surface or whether they are joyful? Because I think that there can be a certain amount of fake it till you make it. But
are you talking about like the Instagram post where people just post like their family, how everything's happy? Like that?
Right. But I think even like, I don't know, I think about people that I see walking through their daily life, and not to be negative, but there are a lot of people that their tone is more aligned with Eeyore versus Pooh.
Gotcha.
And so like the humdrums, and we don't want to tell them like cheer up because we don't want to invalidate what they're going through. But I guess my question is, how do you cultivate joy in the midst of so much uncertainty?
Well, one of the things is actually sitting down and understanding and knowing, acknowledging what's important to you. And for me, my family and my clients, I would always say, always know the three most important things to you in life and keep those on your frontal lobe at all times. So when you know what's important to you, for me, it's my faith, my family, and fun. Those three things are extremely important to me. And
3 F's.
Exactly. So, in knowing that, when things come my way, I mean, my wife was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. Guess what? She's still here, and I'm still able to love on her.
Right.
So that's perspective. When it comes to what's going on around us, I still have my family, and they have me. And then fun is just, I just think it's, we shouldn't go through a day in life, in my opinion, without some type of laughter, smiling, or fun. I think life's too fragile not to.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I know it's easy to just get caught up in the heaviness. I know that I'm guilty of that. And so, Chris, how about we bring a little bit more fun?
I'm all for that. I always bring the fun. We talk about.
You do. He's definitely my comic relief.
Well, and it doesn't mean you can't cry. It doesn't mean you can't, wallow in sorrow. What it means is you can't stay there.
Right.
And my wife, if she was on this podcast, she'd tell you that every single day I play a love song, one of her favorites, and we dance.
What?
I didn't do that. I didn't
Seriously
do that
gonna make
before.
Me cry.
but I didn't do that before her diagnosis. But I said, in this storm, in this journey, there will be some silver lining, and we will make it a silver lining. And I can tell you, do I always feel like I was rushing the other day? And I was just like, oh, I got to play the song. So she was in bed. So I thought I was going to get away with just playing the song, and she'd listen and hear it. She got up out of bed, came to the closet. I was getting dressed, and we danced. I danced half dressed. So, and that's not toxic positivity. I'm acknowledging, we could have been dancing and she could have had a cramp from a side effect. She was running the other day and had a cramp and almost fell. So, in the midst of your joy, life will happen, and you let it happen. You experience it, and you get through it. You just don't stay there.
Yeah, that's really powerful. As you're talking about dancing with your wife in the closet, it made me reflect on when I was going through my really rough time about a week and a half ago, and Chris and I were here, getting ready to shut everything down, and I just sat on the bed and was just kind of pouring my heart out about feeling overwhelmed and anxious and out of control. And I just remember, I didn't know how he was going to receive it, because he's always a very supportive person, but he just wrapped his arms around me and he said, whatever you need, I'm going to be here. I might not always know the right thing to say or do, but if you help tell me, I'm going to figure out how to walk through it with you. And I will say that moment has stood out to me when I've gone through some little rough patches over the last week or so, because it was in my lowest point that he was able to say that he didn't have to be in control and fix the situation, but he was going to love me well through it. And I think that in the midst of everything everybody's going through right now, that's a message that I would hope that everybody can grab hold of.
Yes, but for Chris to do that, there has to be a certain level of reflection and authenticity within himself to actually, I think that's incredible what he did. I
Thank
just
you.
wish
Thank you.
more men or more people would be able to do that. But again, there has to be a certain comfort level in that individual with
Right.
themselves to extend themselves and even acknowledge that I might not be able to fix it, but whatever it is you need, I'm here. I just think that's awesome. Hey guys, I look forward to the book someday.
Thank you. I did have one more about empathy for you. Do you find in your professional background, and not to stereotype, that it's a little bit more challenging for men to demonstrate empathy because of the need to be strong, macho, protector, provider?
Certainly. When one of the things in couples counseling is explaining the difference to couples off the bat, particularly with opposite sex marriages, whereby sometimes women, and every couples book would say this, women want attention. If it boils down to one thing, women need attention, want attention. On the other hand,
we do.
on the other hand, men, if everything boils down to, men want to feel needed. So when a man doesn't feel like he can fix something or, he's important in a situation, it almost invalidates his manhood, so to speak. So,
yeah.
Exactly. So what we want to encourage men to do, as opposed to just being protectors and providers, we want men to be nurturers. That it's okay to hold your wife. It's okay to cry with your wife. It's okay to hold hands. As basic as these things sound, I can't tell you how many times that they're addressed in therapy sessions.
Really?
Is it because of I think it was like a year or two ago, the phrase toxic masculinity was like coming out really prominent. Do you think that it's just society's kind of poisoned our view of what it means to be a successful man in a relationship?
I think so. I think society, I think if you look at the shows and various things that we watch, there's really subtle messages in everything. I watched something the other night on how social media does that. It concerned me. But even with couples, when have you seen a commercial with a child where couples are actually like frowning on changing a pamper or
right.
upset because the child has awakened in the middle of the night, won't go back to sleep?
Mm-hmm.
It's always Hallmark, Hallmark-ish.
Right.
Yeah, Christine will tell you all about that. She loves that Hallmark stuff. She's a sucker for all the Hallmark stuff.
Throw me under the bus, Chris.
But so that paints a picture for everyone. So people take it and they run with it, and much of it comes from what our fathers and their fathers were taught. And going out killing the bear was the operational definition of being a man for many.
Right.
So I'm gonna go to work. I'm gonna put food on this table. Leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
There's so much more to being a man, and I constantly tell men that some of the hardest things define us mostly like asking for help.
Right.
Being able to say, "Hey, I need help. I can't do this alone." How many men, if we surveyed right now, would say that I've ever asked for help?
Right.
Because many men see that as a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, society has to do better. But I really do think that couples can reinforce one another, because there may be things you want from Chris that he's not providing. And he's read every book under the sun on what it means to be a great husband or a great man.
Mm-hmm.
But still, everybody is a study of one.
Right.
So regardless of what research we cite, every person is a study of one. So that's what makes or can make human interaction so challenging.
Well, this has been super insightful, and we appreciate your time so much. You've given us a lot to process and think about. But is there one nugget of truth that you would like to leave with our listeners as we wrap out our interview together?
Yes, I think I would like to say that oftentimes it's difficult to fully understand something unless you've been through it. But the experience of it doesn't mean it doesn't matter.
That's deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Doc Brown, where can our listeners find you to learn more about your work as a clinical psychologist and a social justice advocate?
They can find me at my website at docspeaks.com or my Instagram at Adolph, and that's ADOLP as in Papa, H as in Hotel, Brown, or Twitter at DocSpeaks.
Fantastic. That's great.
Awesome. Well, we so appreciate your time, and I'm going to be listening to this episode over and over again as I think it's given me a lot to think about and act upon as we enter into 2021. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate being here.
Thanks, Doc.
The Podbreed Network is strictly for the small podcasts that are up and coming in the vast world of podcasting. Podbreed is made up of many diverse podcasts coming together to achieve the same goal of being the best damn podcast network on the planet. Find out more at podbreed.com.
Well, that was a super fascinating interview.
Oh, Dr. Adolph is great.
I really loved Doc Brown and hearing about his background. And I think that even the conversation around empathy and the empathy gap was really enlightening to me.
It very much so is, because you think about it, so many people are struggling right now, and how do you help out without physically like doing a handout, you know?
Right. And I think about, like, I reflect on myself and going through hard things. Sometimes I really want empathy from people when I'm going through hard things, but sometimes it's hard to turn that around and offer it to others when they're struggling. And so I think it reminds me of, it's really important to like slow down and to just be present with people and to be just very honest and open. And I would like to think that I've been growing in my empathy as the pandemic has continued on.
What do you think about me, babe? Do you think I'm very, do you think I have empathy, or do you think I'm working on it? Or it's a work in progress?
I think it's a work in progress. You know, we've had conversations about this where I'm telling you that I'm struggling with something, and your approach to empathy is to immediately connect it with something you've done, but then you kind of dominate the conversation. So for example,
whatever.
So for example, if I was to say to you, honey, I've had a really rough day at work, your response would be,
I had a rougher day?
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, wow, yeah, I had a rougher day and this is what happened and my day's been really crummy. And I'm like, okay, honey, what I've been trying to learn to do is to like pause you and say, okay, I get that you're trying to connect with me, but I want you to hear me.
But I like to share because I come from a place of like relatability.
Right. And that's, I think, where it kind of gets a little bit messy with empathy is sometimes that person wants you to feel with them and not just take over. I call it hijacking the conversation.
Oh, really?
I've told you that before, huh?
Yeah. You always tell me, wait till I finish. Can I finish your sentence?
Can I finish my sentence?
That's your favorite line to say.
Yeah, and that's so funny because when I was having my bridal shower, they asked you all these questions like, what is... asking you, Chris, what's Christine's most used phrase? And it was something like, can I finish my sentence, please?
Right. That was exactly what I answered. And it was correct. So yeah. I win.
But that's what we've been learning how to navigate is we've been in this relationship is when you have been single for so long, you just figure out how to take care of yourself and how to like fly solo and to take care of your kids by yourself. And this relationship is teaching us how to like put ourselves in the other person's shoes and to really slow down. And I would say you've actually made a whole lot of growth. And I am working on showing more empathy when you're sick or when you're just feeling really down, because I'm just so used to you being the get her done kind of guy that it's hard for me to acknowledge that you're human sometimes.
Yeah, only so many things I can do. I'm my superpowers are do it all, but yeah, I can't do everything. I guess
Right.
I try though.
And I think that when people show empathy to one another, it makes it easier to ask for help. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah, when somebody's like, "Hey, I'm really sorry you're going through this. I remember when I was at a really low time, I was looking for help. Is there something I could do to help you?"
It's kind of what I do a little bit. I try to be very relatable, with people. I try to, because we all have had experiences. We all have had problems. We've all gone through bad things. And I think for me personally is I try to be very relatable to whoever's situation they're going through, whatever it could be. And I know people are going through a lot right now with the whole COVID and uncertainty with their careers, their jobs. People are losing houses, and especially the homeless problem. It's really increasing here in San Diego, and things like that. But sometimes I feel so helpless. Like what I can't. I mean, I think a lot of people I've run into, they'll want money or they'll want things like that. But it's like, do you want money or do you want help? It seems like, is money going to really help you, or is it just going to get you your next fix?
Right, because enablement and empathy are two very different things. Like, you don't want to enable somebody to stay in a negative pattern. And so, like, how do you show empathy and be present with them and support them without just allowing people to stay in a negative cycle? And I think it's a very thin line between those two. And so I would just say that, like you asked how you're doing with empathy, and you said work in progress. I'm definitely a work in progress. And I think as long as we both understand that we are works in progress, it'll help to keep us humble in our relationship enough to try and be authentic with each other, right?
Amen, sister. I love it. That's great. And anything else, babe?
No. I'm going to listen to this interview over and over again because I think Doc Brown had some really great thought nuggets for us. And I think that other people are going to get a lot out of it too.
That's great. Thanks, Doc, for showing up on the show today. We really appreciate having you on here. And if you want to have more about us and our show, you can go to www.chrisandchristineshow.com. And that is Chris and Christine with the letter K. The link will be in the description notes on this podcast.
Yep. And you'll also be able to find anything about Doc Brown in the show notes too. And so thank you so much for listening. And we will have you all back here next week. Remember this week that life is too short to wake up in the morning with regret.
So love the people who treat you right, forget about the ones who don't, and believe that everything happens for a reason.
If you get a chance, take it. If it changes your life, let it. Nobody said that it would be easy.
They just promised it would be worth it. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Chris.
And I'm Christine. And until next week,
keep moving forward.